People coming in. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Give y'all a second to come in. So there's been a change. We're going to actually do a presentation on ROSC workshops. We have academies coming up, and we just want to give people an opportunity to kind of, see what we're actually looking for as scores for this CARES application and what CARES is all about. All righty. Good afternoon, Jennifer. Let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Dwayne Ellis, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means to me is that it's been 6 years since I felt the need to use any mind-altering drugs to change the way I feel. And simply put, recovery, has awarded me the opportunity to live my truth and be proud of it. Welcome to the June webinar, where we will be talking about the ROSC CARES workshop. So let's go over just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Those who stay for the entirety will earn 1.5 CEUs. When submitting your CEUs, keep up with the month, the topic, the panelists, which in this case would be June. The topic would be ROSC CARES workshop. That's ROSC, and then CARES workshop. And the facilitator is me, Dwayne Ellis. You'll receive a certificate for this training no later than the end of next week from Tia Morgan. You will be muted throughout the entirety of this presentation, but you can put your questions in the chat or Q&A box, and we will try our best to answer all questions, okay? And also, this will be an interactive webinar at some points, especially when we start off. I'm gonna need a volunteer for a dyad. So with that being said, would anybody volunteer to do a dyad with me? I'll promote you to be a panelist and we'll go from there. Anybody in the chat that would like to do a dyad with me? You can raise your virtual hand or even put it in the chat. Anybody. Oh, we got one. Jennifer, I'm about to promote you to be a panelist. There we go. You're now a panelist. If you could just unmute yourself. You don't necessarily have to show your video unless you want to. We love to see you, but you don't have to. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Perfect. So we're going to do a dyad. I'm going to go ahead and get a timer, and I'll just make you aware when the time is up, and then we'll switch roles. So one of us will be telling a story about a time where we came back from something difficult. The first person to go, I guess it'll be the person who got up the earliest. What time did you get up?
About 4 o'clock.
Oh, wow. So yeah, you're definitely going first. So what I'm going to do on my end is just listen. I can't say a word. All I could do is just, nod my head, show those, that empathetic body language, and that's it. And you get to speak for 2 minutes. The only time I'll talk is when I make you aware that the time is up. So it's on you, and get ready to go now.
I'm going to find it very difficult to talk about myself for 2 minutes. However, my name's Jennifer Barnett. I'm personal long-term recovery, and what that means for me is it's been 14 years since I've had any mind-altering substances to take care of my mental health and substance use disorder. So the most recent adversity that I've gone through is finding out that I had cancer, and the cancer that I have is not curable. It's just something that I'll constantly be treated for. And there was a time in my past to where that would just been an excuse for me to go on and stay numb with the narcotics and stuff that I used. But today I choose to focus on how my life would be affected by that. How would my grandchildren and my children be affected by that? So today I choose to go ahead and just think about, what is my future looking like? What do I want it to look like? And how can I make it look better? And yeah, I knew it was, I was never going to last 2 minutes. But, having a healthy, focused family relationship with my kids, that helps me a lot. They're my biggest support system. Um, I really don't know what else to say about that. There's a lot of different adversities that I can go through, but this one probably sticks with me the most because I have a difficult time accepting it. So, but I do choose to move on forward from it and not keep looking back at it. That's all I got, Dwayne.
All right, thank you. You pretty much did. You had 10 seconds left, so you did a great job.
Okay.
So now we'll switch roles and I'll reset the clock and go. So for me, a time that I came back from something difficult, I think back to when I lost my first friend as a result of this disease. He overdosed, and that was a big trial in my life because I hadn't lost anybody in recovery yet. And I didn't realize how much I depended on drugs as like to cope with my emotions. And I just had all of these raw emotions and it was super uncomfortable. And I'm just so used to, going to a drug or a drink, that it was just something new to me and I had to deal with it a different way. Obviously, if I wanted to continue to abstain from drugs. So relying on my support network was something I had to do. I had to talk a little bit more than I wanted to. I had to talk about my feelings, which is something just growing up as a man and having a dad and in my life and things like that message of, we don't cry, that's weak, things like that is just kind of embedded in my head. But during this time, it wasn't even about any of that. I had to get it off my chest and it actually showed strength. So that was something very difficult for me, but I was able to not overcome it because of course I still think about him, but I was able to cope with it in a healthy way that benefited my recovery and allows me to share that experience with someone else that may be going through that. But I think I finished just around the time you did. I had about 10 seconds left.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you. I'm gonna put you back in the group, and thank you for letting me do that with you. Before you go though, what do you think the purpose of that dyad was for?
Be an active listener,
Mm,
listening and being able to hear what is being said to you. For
absolutely.
me, it's like a total connection. If you're able to sit there and really actively listen to what somebody else is trying to tell you.
Yep.
There's an untold story in there.
And also, along with that, just that's a part of being a cares, right? So you just wanna be an effective listener in that role because it seems like there's been a pattern of just this you know, this expert driven mentality within these treatment centers and everything where it's like the nurse or the case manager or anybody but the peer is making the decision for the peer. So this is just an exercise putting you in the room with that peer where you're allowing that peer to voice their self and you just sit back and listen without interrupting and maybe telling them what you think they should do, or even something as simple as me too. Even when you're trying to relate, you're making it about you and you don't even realize it. So
Right.
effective listening is a big part of becoming a cares. But thank you for doing that. And I'm about to
Thank
put you
you.
back in the group of the attendees. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So what helped you in your recovery? Family, support, friends, forgiveness, faith, compassion, resiliency, helping others, meaningful work and career, time, education, hope, new beginnings, and taking action. Do any of these stick out for anybody, or did anybody want to share? I could promote you to a panelist and we could talk a little about maybe what helped you throughout your recovery. I see Deborah has her hand raised, so I'll make Deborah a panelist. If anybody else would like to share on what helped you, we'd love to hear from you. I see Belinda raised her hand as well. I'll make you a panelist too, Belinda. Miss Deborah, it's on you. You're still muted though.
How about now?
You're good to go. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
So a couple of things, and let me just, I'd had my hand up before, so let me just share that exercise I have put into our new employee orientation on recovery, because it's the active listening is so important. For example, when we're doing motivational interviewing, when we're meeting somebody where they are. But I think that the first word that, I mean, so many of these words are important to me, but the one that jumps out all the time is hope. After multiple overdoses, it was hope. It was a very long time ago when there was nothing like CPSs, when there were 2 people on my last overdose out of many that were in the ER. And I don't know their names, but they came up to me, and I kept overdosing because I thought, I'm hopeless. There is no way. They gave me my first hope. They shared experience. So hope becomes so important to me. It's there. I mean, so many of these words are meaningful in my recovery, but hope just is the most important 4-letter word I can think of.
That's powerful. Thank you, Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to seeing you in the future webinars. That horse one will be coming soon. We had to postpone it, but it is coming. So thank you.
Horses are one of my passions. Are you kidding? I was like so excited, but this is important. It's all important.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Deb.
Mm-hmm.
And Berlinda, if you would like to, good morning. How you doing?
Better than yesterday.
Good. So what helps you out of this list? Anything that you wanted to talk on?
Well, all of them, but right now where I'm at, and the most, when I first, decided that I was done, was forgiveness. Having to forgive myself for all the things that I told me that I did wrong. Having to forgive others and take a look at the part that I played in my entire active use. Just being aware that my foundation is built on spirituality. And with that being the case, I couldn't ask this loving and caring entity to forgive me if I wasn't willing to be forgiven. So that was really important to me. My family, other individuals who I had caused harm, so that's the thing that hits me even right now. I'm going through a situation where my brother was killed, and I see the mental health in the person that did it. And I'm asking this entity to help me to forgive the person, but also help me to forgive the act. So forgiveness is I'm really big on forgiveness.
All right. Thank you for sharing that strength, Belinda. I really appreciate it. And my condolences. So Belinda, I'm sorry, I can't talk today. Belinda talked about family. Miss Deborah talked about hope. Simone, if you would like to share, it's on you.
Yes, good morning, everybody. CARES 39. It's so good to be a part of this process. Can you repeat the question again for me?
So the question is simple. If you look at the slide in front of you, From this list, we want to know what helped you in your recovery. Probably mostly everything, but what sticks out for you? What helped?
Got you. You know, the new beginnings of this process for me, I can say that. And when I talk about the new beginnings, it's like all the different things that I have gained since I've been in this process, because I've been willing, because I've been up through different challenges, things that I can't change and try to change them. And in that, I've learned that I always have to I can restart my day at any given time that I choose to. And, you know, I love how Belinda talked about that forgiveness, because that's a big component for me as well. You know, with this process, this is how it has helped me to be able to forgive myself, love people for where they're at. So I made up an acronym for love, letting other values exist, because I could be so judgmental at times. I had to learn to not look at them, look at the disease, look at the behavior, the mental health part of it, the same way that I needed to look into myself. So new beginnings is that's the opportunity to grow. And I love walking in this process with helping other people in their new beginnings and seeing that your life can be so much more than what we think it could ever be. So in education, that really helped me. I was one of those that was so afraid of writing, so afraid of not being corrected. I would push everybody that I knew to go to college. And finally, it was like I was at the last person at the end of the line. I had nobody else to push. And then it left me to go ahead and go to school. And I did very well. I got my associate's degree and 30 credits short of my bachelor's degree. And the education coming through CARES, the education I'm receiving, trying to get certified for CAC, has helped me 100% in my process. Thank you so much for being here and allowing me to share.
Thank you, Simone. So Simone talked about new beginnings. We had Berlinda talk about family. Miss Deb talked about hope. And these are all cares. So it's great that we have you all sharing your experience, strength, and hope, because we are about to get into the process of what the application should look like if you want to become a cares. But before we do that, I want to allow John to share before we move on.
Appreciate it, Dwayne. I'm John. I'm a blessed person in long-term recovery. What the top three for me, especially off the start in recovery, started with faith, and then family, and then friends, and in that order. And so I'm so blessed to work at Connections here in Columbus, Georgia, as a recovery coach, where so many of my friends around me every day hold me accountable. And so obviously, I'm blessed to have a wife that she's also in recovery and has a similar background to me. So I have her in my corner and my kids. And so that family is a big accountability for me. I started off through my higher power with God, but and then my family hold me accountable to stay on track for them and with them. And then all the friends from the meetings that I go to, the NA meetings up here at Connections, we have Bible study in the morning times. My Fort Church I go to on Sundays, it's about 90% of people there are people in recovery. And so I have a lot of friends that hold me accountable in my life in every direction. And I hold them accountable, we hold each other accountable. And there's strength in numbers with that. And just being in recovery, I'm so blessed to have a job where I'm a recovery coach, where I'm around people in recovery every single day. And so, because definitely I still battle with things like having drug dreams, and I still have things that come up like that. And I still battle with cravings from time to time, even with 7 years clean. But having this many friends around me in recovery every day, it's such a strong point for me in my life on staying on track.
Nice. Thank you, John. I appreciate your share. And there'll be plenty more times to share. Ms. Clemens, I saw that you had your hands up, and you will be next when I call on somebody. Thank you, John. So, the roles of a peer recovery coach. There's three of them, three main roles amongst many other things, right? Personal guide and mentor for individuals seeking to achieve or sustain long-term recovery from addiction, regardless of pathway to recovery. Also a connector to instrumental recovery supportive resources, including housing, employment, and other professional and non-professional services, and a liaison to formal and informal community supports and resources and recovery supporting activities. And the difference between the connector and the liaison, I know they sound like similar roles, and they are similar, but the connectors focus more on the lifestyle of that person in recovery. And as far as the liaison, it seems like that's more focused on recovery oriented like services. So we get into recovery, rather we're coming from jail, homelessness, just a regular life where nothing was really going wrong. You had a job and stuff like that. So we come from all these places, and depending on where we're coming from, we could be coming from the Army. So we're coming from all of these places. We're going to need different resources and different needs as far as recovery and just our overall lifestyle. So that would be the difference between the two. And the CARES core competencies, recovery groups, individual recovery check-ins based on evidence-based practices, and recovery advocacy, rather you're advocating for yourself, the peer, or the system. I was one who thought of advocating as standing up and just speaking loud and being rude. And that's what I did a lot when I worked in a crisis stabilization unit until I became a CARES and went to the CARES Academy. And Neil Campbell and George Brott actually taught me how to advocate in a productive way to where I'm not hurting myself, my employment, or hurting the peer or the system in general. So it's really important to say this and not that, right? So when maybe the people you're working with, maybe there's people on here that aren't a CARES yet, but spread the message to become a CARES for those who are interested. And this is just an opportunity to learn how to advocate. And I mean, it's a 40-hour training, it's a full week. You're gonna learn a lot more, but that's one of the many things that you do learn is how to advocate in a more beneficial way. Okay, so the criteria for becoming a CARES, and this is all going to be recorded. So if you're working in the field and you have a peer that's interested, you can absolutely have them reach out to me, but this will be recorded and this is a recording that they can watch. Okay, so the criteria for acceptance, you have to have a high school diploma or a GED. You don't have to have a copy of it. We're going based off your word. And you have to have 2 years of continuous abstinent recovery. And then you'll go on to submit a CARES application, which is the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about here shortly. It'll be a writing sample and 2 reference letters. Neither of your reference letters can be a relative, and at least one of your references has to be in recovery, and they have to state that they're in recovery within the writing sample so that we know. So again, no relatives on either of the references, and at least one of them has to be in recovery and stated within the reference letter. Okay, and applications just opened up for CARES 50. Now, CARES 50 is a specialty academy. It's going to be for individuals who have past experience or just current experience with medicated assisted treatment as their pathway of recovery. The applications opened up on May 30th and they'll close on July 11th. CARES 50 will take place August 22nd through the 26th. So you still got a couple of weeks to submit the application if you know somebody who fits within that criteria. If they don't meet the criteria of having that medicated assisted treatment experience, either currently or in the past, then they'll have to wait for CARES 51. And we do have workshops that will be coming available in preparation for CARES 51. And CARES 51 will take place October 17th through the 21st. The applications for CARES 51 open up August 1st and they close September 5th. And every time applications close, it's going to be on a Monday and it closes at 4 p.m. So try to get them in before that mark. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the CARES values. Miss Clements, did you still want to participate? Because I am gonna need somebody for this section. What I'm gonna do is break down each of the 6 CARES values, and as I explain them, I'm gonna ask an individual of CARES or anybody who would like to participate, what they would put in their writing sample for that value. So let's see, I'm gonna ask Ms. Clements to become a panelist. Promote the panelist. Let's give her a second, and Ms. Clements, if she's willing to, she'll be our guest for right now. She may be having some issues. Would anybody else like to volunteer to go through the CARES values with me? I'm going to explain them, and then I'm just going to ask you what you would put in your writing sample to display that CARES value. Nobody? Okay, that's fine. We'll just go through the values. So first, we have commitment. So when we're doing commitment within the writing sample, what we're looking for is ways in which you've committed to something. That can be, if you're a 12-stepper, maybe you show up to the Sunday meeting early every Sunday, and you make the coffee, and you've consistently did that for the past 2 or 3 years. That's an example of commitment. Your recovery is going to be an example of commitment. So you're going to get credit for this no matter what. But we want to know what you've done and what you've stuck to for a certain amount of time. Usually a good way to demonstrate that is numbers. I've done this for such and such years. I've done this for such and such years. John is raising his hand, so I think he's willing to be our guest for this part. So I'm going to promote you to panelist, John. And John, I want to know what you would do, what you would put in your writing sample for commitment. There you go.
So commitment, I still have the person in recovery from addiction part of me, where I still get addicted to things easily, and it can change from one thing to another. And so, but one of the commitments that I've done and that I've actually become addicted to is working out. I have 7 years in recovery, and I started out while I was still in the rehab, working out 3 days a week, doing push-ups and diamond push-ups and crunches and squats and stuff, and with my backpack on. And I started it while I was in the rehab. I was in deep depression. I had about 2 weeks in recovery, and I was battling with a lot of depression from it. And so that pulled me out of it, walking or jogging in the evenings. And so one of the commitments I have now is 3 days a week, like religiously. I go and work out, and it helps me to find balance with things. We all need to find balance with being with recovery, eating well, spiritual, do things to grow spiritually. Make sure we're doing things that are fun in our lives, making sure we're doing our hobby times, making sure we're working enough, but not working too much. Just balance with all that. And me with commitment to working out at the gym 3 days a week for 7 consecutive years, that's a big part of my recovery. It shows commitment, and it's for something that's healthy for me. And it helps me to stay on track in every other area. I'm looking forward to it this evening. Whenever I get off I get off work, I'm hosting a meeting up here, and then when the meeting's over, I'm going straight to the gym. And so that really helps me stay on track, is my commitment to staying physically well.
Perfect. So John says that amongst all the things that he named, he would put working out, and he's been doing that for a whole bunch of years. So putting that in there, that shows you have commitment to something. Along with your recovery, like I said, if you're doing this, if you're applying for CARES and you're doing this letter, you're going to get points automatically because you've committed to your recovery. Berlinda, John, and Simone, y'all can hop on as well and share your video and things, and I'll be calling on y'all as we go through the values. The next one is integrity. Berlinda, I'll call on you for this one. So we want to see integrity within the writing sample as well. And integrity means you're doing those things when nobody's looking, right? So for me, something I would put in my writing sample for integrity is not only am I a mentor to some of the peers that I work with, when I go home, I'm also a father, and I have that same type of mentorship with my kids. So even when nobody's looking, even when I'm away from the peers, I carry it home and I'm doing stuff at my house with my kid. And that's how I would have integrity within my writing sample, doing those things when nobody's looking. Berlinda, what would you put in your writing sample for integrity?
Well, what I did put in mind was that being a sponsor, being that example by sight, you know, and totally, Dwayne, the things that I would do, and it was just between me and my higher power, you know, being there for my sponsees, you know, integrity means a lot for me. I work on the CARES warm line, and being on time, you know, being there to help another individual to walk through whatever challenge or even a triumph. But what I put in my letter was that I make sure that my words meets my actions.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Berlinda. Simone, I'm going to call on you for this one. Diversity. So when we're talking about diversity within the writing sample, this has actually changed. It used to be about different demographics, rather it be the homeless community, LGBTQ, and the list goes on. So that we definitely want to hear all of that. So I'm not saying take that out, because we definitely need to hear that as well. But when we're talking about diversity, I want you to take a look at the picture in front of you. We want to know that you're working with individuals that don't look like you. Because if you're going to be a CARES, you got to know that you're going to be dealing with a lot of peers, and we want to know if that peer steps into that office that you're going to give them the same peer support as any other individual, and that there's going to be some equality in that, and everybody's going to get these services. So we want to know that you are culturally diverse already. So for me, I'll share something that I've seen in an application. This individual, he said that on the weekends he plays tennis with a group of Indian Americans, and he wasn't Indian. So that's an example of diversity. So what I'm saying is it can be recovery related, but it also doesn't have to be. Sometimes what I do hear is that people bring a meeting to the prisons, right? So if they stop right there, they're going to get a little bit of credit. And if you want to know why, I'll tell you. So I can assume that if you're bringing a meeting to a prison, that there's not just one ethnicity in that prison. It's a lot of flavors in there. But the fact that you didn't tell me that there were a lot of flavors, you could have easily switched that up and said, I go to the prison where I bring a meeting to African Americans, Caucasians, Asian Americans, the Latin community. If you put all of those flavors in there, list all these ethnicities, I know it may be uncomfortable to list those off, but we want you to list those off, and I'll tell you why. So is because we get so many applications. There's got to be some way that you could separate yourself. This is a competitive field, so we want you to get specific. Okay, so as far as diversity, Simone, what would you put in your writing sample? How would you display that, working with people that do not look like you?
Well, again, Simone, long-term person in recovery. What that means to me that I'm a mother of 4 daughters and 6 grandchildren, and that they've never seen me, and that influenced my grandchildren. I'm a business owner, and I'm also an employee at a rehab, and I'm just growing every day in this process. And so diversity, I can truly speak to for the fact that we get all different type of clients. The most one that stood out the most is I had a client that came and she told me she was a refugee. And I was like, I've never heard anyone, I heard the word, but I've never heard of like, what is a refugee? And so I went to my therapist and we discussed it, what the culture where she came from a hostile position from her country, and came here and lived in a tent, got hooked on heroin, and her life totally spun out. And they made me her case manager. So I had to learn how to be more open to her belief system. She was very prideful. I even said to the therapist, out of all the clients I've ever had, she's the only client that read all the stipulations step by step, all the rules step by step. And she asked for examples because she was like, I do not want to end up homeless again. And I could just see like her commitment. She has a job. She was homeless and went to that job, which covered her addiction. However, she was like, I cannot miss my work. So we had to build our schedule for her to work for her, you know? And also I go to the jails. Thank God for H&I. That's how I started this process. So I do see multiple ethnicities all the time. And I'm able to learn to be understanding versus being understood. And that's a very big part about diversity. Not looking at a person for, not looking at the person's accent or their skin tone, but looking at their heart. So those are the things that I have learned since I've been in this process about being able to be diversified, working with any culture, that is someone that's dealing with mental health and substance abuse. And that's all I'm here is to listen and walk with them through that process. And sometimes I have to Google some information in order to know more about their culture. So I don't disrespect them in any way, and that I also understand how to approach them about certain things, because different ethnicities, a lot of them have different structures about their culture. And that's why that client stands out to me, because, you know, we had to 1013 her, and it was very, very emotional for me, because she just felt that she came to us and told us that she didn't want to live, and, you know, she was having some issues. She wanted to go back out and relapse and, you know, just overdose like her boyfriend did. So we had to 1013 her, and she couldn't understand why. She's like, I'm telling you my truth, but what? And the biggest thing is her pride on what does that look like to me to go into a psych ward versus knowing that we were here to help her. So again, being able to meet people where they're at, not trying to make them who I am or make them who I think that they need to be, but allowing them to be who they are and meeting them where they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. I'm glad we got some cares on here. They're going over and beyond with these descriptions, and it's super helpful to those who may want to apply, because they're not only seeing what we're looking for, but why we look for it. Paula Crane, Life Enrichment Center. I don't know who that is, but I saw that you wanted to share. Would you like to share on diversity or the next piece?
I can share on diversity, Dwayne. This is Bernice Taylor Davis.
Hey, Bernice.
Hey, how are you? I've been trying to raise my hand for the longest. But yes, diversity is a good subject. You know, here at the Paula Crane Life Enrichment Center, I deal with a lot of diverse people. And I've learned to understand that everything is not for everybody. You know, every person that comes in, they have a different culture. And like Simone said, a lot of times I have to Google their culture and find out what are their cultural differences than ours. And once I find out, I have to work up a plan to get them engaged in their own life. And diversity is such a wonderful thing, because my church home, we often deal with diversity, different types of people. And the more people that I can talk to that are diverse, it brings more flavor to what we're doing as cares. You know, we're reaching out to all walks of life and helping each one of them develop into the person that they're supposed to be, and not putting judgment or placing judgment on anyone. You know, I love being a cares, and I'm a cares 40. And so I love diversity. And I'm also a person that goes into the prisons with our church. And we carry the message in the prisons, you know, and the jails, and you know, just allow people to be able to ask the questions about the God, their understanding, and whatever else questions they have about, you know, the things that they're wondering about. Because I know the God that I serve, he's just no respect of persons, and what's good for one is good for another. And so, you know, I just continue to just give back to any person who wants it.
Thank you, Bernice.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that. So the next one, we've talked about 3, we're on the 4th one, and it's hope. How do you convey hope? So within your writing sample, we want to know, you know, your story in itself has a lot of hope in it, but we want to know specifically how you're conveying hope within your community. So this can be, maybe you want to share 2 or 3 sentences. If I was doing a writing sample, I could share that there was a peer at this halfway house and he was really struggling and he didn't know really who to open up to, or just he was dealing with some family issues. And I went over there and we talked it out, and we went on a drive and we talked and you know, we kind of figured out a game plan on what needed to happen next, but I let him figure out his game plan. And now present day, he's doing great. So that's just a little story that I can maybe turn into maybe 3 sentences of like an example of how I conveyed hope. Also, if you're sponsoring somebody, you're conveying hope. That's an example. If you're sharing your story at meetings, that's an example of conveying hope. So let's see who we got. Let's go with John. What would you put in your writing sample, John, that would show that you convey hope to others?
Conveying hope to others. I share some of the deepest things that have went wrong in my life to give hope to others. I don't hold anything back. I share a story that the last thing that I did in recovery was steal my mom's phone the day before. Actually, I sold my mom's phone for drugs the day before I left for the last rehab I went to. So the last thing I did was rob my mom and steal from her. So, and I share that with people that are really at the bottom, that just got out of jail that day, or they're still in addiction, and I meet them on the side of the road or wherever, because I'm always aggressive with outreach, and I share my story everywhere I go. And so I think that gives people hope when they see, that I've been locked up a dozen times. I've been to 4 rehabs and I've OD'd several times. And I stole my mom's phone. The only reason my mom let me borrow the phone was because she knew I was going to go to the rehab in a couple of days. And she said, well, but my family was blessed me with cutting me off. They wouldn't do anything but pray for me and bring me leftover food sometimes. But she let me hang on her phone. It was 3 months prepaid straight talk on it. And I traded it for dope a few hours before I went to the rehab. And I just share my story raw with everybody. And I think it gives them hope, seeing, hey, if John's got 7 years in recovery and he's been all the way down through there like I have. And so I don't hold anything back with it. And I share like that things didn't happen real quickly in my life. Like, be patient with things, just because we get into recovery doesn't mean everything's going to take care of itself immediately. And so I'm always sharing my story all the way down to the worst parts of it with folks. And then encourage them and show them like what has happened in my life and sharing some of my lived experience with them.
Thank you, John. Deborah, how would you put conveying hope within your writing sample?
Well, it's been a few years. Yay, number 16. And back then I did very open, like John, about sharing what gave me hope initially, but also on an ongoing, something that I've learned, and I write about it for the organization, speak about it out loud in the community, is that how we communicate. And when we're communicating hope, we can speak it, we can write about it, but we should never forget that our presence peer to peer just our physical presence. So somebody may be needing hope and they don't want to talk, but peer to peer, you sit down next to them, that type of connection can provide a lot of hope. So we talk about 3 different ways to communicate hope, and that's one that sometimes people think we have to always be running our mouths, and we all are pretty good at that. But the presence, to know at that worst moment or whatever it is, I can't talk right now, but you sitting down next to me gives me hope.
Nice. Thank you, Deborah. That was great. That was great. So now we've went through hope. We're almost done with the values. I believe we have 2 more. The next one is wellness. Sometimes I read these writing samples. They're doing so great with all the information they have, but throughout the whole thing, they're talking about all these things they do for the community, but they forget about themselves. So, you know, with all that's been said so far, now we're going to talk about wellness, because this is another CARES value that we need to see in your writing sample. What do you do for yourself? Rather it be yoga, breathing exercises, maybe you work out, go to meetings, you go to church. It's basically your recovery capital. What are you doing for yourself? So let's go with Berlinda. What would you put for wellness within your writing sample?
Well, Dwayne, in my writing sample, what I would put in there and what I did put in there is I enjoy nature, you know, and the sound of water calms me. So a lot of times I have a lake, you know, right here in my subdivision. I'll go to the lake, you know, and just sit there. I make sure that whatever medications I need to take, I take them. I make sure that I take my walks. I have a dog, so I got to take my walks. You know, I get enough rest. You know, being a person in long-term recovery, you know, these 28 years, I'm not going to say they've been hard. I'm going to say they've been necessary. So that I put that in there to let everyone know that if I don't take care of me, how can I take care of you? You know, I totally enjoy hot bubble baths. I go get massages. You know, I get the pedicures because it tickles, but I go ahead and do it because I realize that I'm important. And for me to give back, I got to take care of me in order to take care of someone else.
Thank you, Berlinda. And that's a big part of it. You'll learn that within the CARES Academy, but the most important, whose recovery comes first, right? It's yours. You may say the peers, or you may say this or that, but it's really yours, because if your recovery isn't taken care of, how could you expect to take care of somebody else or assist somebody or help somebody? Bernice, what would you put for wellness within your writing sample? I see you got your hand up.
Oh my God, I love wellness because it's like Belinda said, I'm a person in long-term recovery with going on 26 years clean. And so in long-term recovery, so I have to always take my medication because I'm on medication. I'm learning how to eat better. You know, I like to go to movies. I like to go to the gym, walk on the treadmill, do the bicycle. You know, I love to walk in the park, you know, so those things I really, really care about. I love to get sun because my body tell me when I need to go out there and get me some vitamin D. So I love nature also. And those are the things that I do for myself. You know, I know when I need to do self-care on myself.
Good. Thank you, Bernice.
Thank you.
Elijah Clemens, what would you put in your writing sample for wellness? There you go.
I'm in the game.
You in the game.
All right. For me, I always talk about long walks, meditation, connecting with my higher power, and just that one-on-one time with me. Like I like nice hot bubble baths, massages, things that'll take me away from just the stress of day-to-day, actions. So definitely let them know that it's okay. I always put it's okay for me to be okay with me. So my massages, nice bubble baths, and just some me time. Turn off the phone. And that's what I would put in there. Like, I turn off my phone and I relax, meditate, and connect with my higher power.
Nice. Thank you, Ms. Clemens.
Mm-hmm.
So we understand what wellness is. We understand what wellness is. Let's move to the last one, recovery. We want to see recovery within your writing sample. So, I mean, we're going to see it regardless because you're a person in recovery if you're filling out this application, right? So there's that. But an important question we want to see answered for the topic of recovery within your writing sample is, what has recovery awarded you? So a nice way to, you could put it anywhere in the writing sample, but for me, like towards the end, wrapping things up, as a result of doing all of this stuff and staying connected and doing this and doing that, it's awarded me the opportunity to be able to buy a house, to have a kid and be there for the kid. I'm a great family member now. All of these things, I could talk about that. So really, when we're speaking on recovery, we want to know in your writing sample, what has recovery done for you? And we want to see that. And all of this, we want to, there's other things that we score on, which we're about to get to, but I want to make sure y'all understand the 6 values before we move on. And I want to also let you know that there's a limit. You have a 500-word limit and a minimum of 250 words. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But the panelists that we have today, does anybody want to share on what you would put for recovery? Let's go with John. John raised his hand. And then we'll go Deborah.
So, recovery has awarded me an amazing family. My wife and I, we met in Journey to Recovery and through a 6-month rehab here in Columbus, Georgia, through New Horizons, now that I'm currently employed for. And so the company where I got all of my the help through to help me get into the rehab and put me in aftercare apartments afterwards and help me get Section 8 housing and took me all the way through. I mean, it was really blessed me. Now I work for this company helping others doing the same thing. And so also recovery has awarded me an adventurous, very adventurous life. I started a Facebook group called Recovery Adventures, and we went skydiving. The first thing we did was go skydiving, and a bunch of people in recovery went with us. The chaplain from the jail here jumped. A lot of OGs from the streets here jumped out of planes with us. The next thing we did was rode zip lines across the Chattahoochee River, did the obstacle course that goes through the top of the trees, and then we went whitewater rafting. And so that was one of the best days of my life. We had a great time. The third thing we did was go to Six Flags. I thought we'd probably about 15 of us to get together to go to Six Flags. 55 people in recovery came to Six Flags with us on that Saturday. And the last thing we just did was we hiked into the top of the mountains and we camped by the edge of a cliff at the tallest point in the state of Alabama at Mount Cheahaw. And about 25 of us went up there. And when we were watching the sun go down from on top of the mountain, people had tears in their eyes. It was so beautiful. It was amazing. And so it's really has awarded me in a very adventurous and fun life.
Yeah, it seems like it awarded you the ability to spread it even more. Recovery awarded you recovery to spread.
And
So
everyone is welcome to come join in. You just look up the Facebook group, Recovery Adventures, and you can jump in with us. We're actually going skydiving again in July.
Nice. Thank you, John. John, I got to do that simulation. I'm not going to lie to you. I got to do the skydiving simulation on the ground to see how that feel before I even consider jumping out of plane. But Deborah, what would you put for recovery within your writing sample?
Probably the first thing that comes to mind is that recovery has allowed me, given me the gift of wanting to live. It has changed it around. So before I'd wake up, I want to die. Recovery has changed it so that every day it's I want to live. That blossoms out to being a better, so my recovery allows me to be a better mother, a better spouse, a better friend, all of those things, but a solid recovery based on wanting to live is important. It's allowed me flexibility. I was smiling, John, when you were doing that, because I was doing caving, rappelling. I used to ride rodeo, but recovery has allowed me flexibility because due to a very serious medical condition, I can't do that anymore. This last year, I've had to learn to walk. So the flexibility to find things that make me feel that passion from inside. So I really feel that it's allowed me to view life in a different way and to have that. I'd love to be able to do some of those things, but you're gonna have to carry me probably. But it's recovery. The first thing, if I go way back to when I wrote, the first thing that comes to mind, and it's very important as a foundation, is that desire to live. Absolutely, the desire to live. And then it blossoms into many areas.
Thank you, Deborah. And then we'll go Berlinda.
Yes, recovery has, well, first things first, John, I got much love for you, but I'm with Dwayne. I'm not jumping out of no perfectly good plane. That ain't happening. But my recovery has allowed me to look at the glass as always half full, you know. And if it's half full, hell, I can reach over there, pick up the pitcher and fill it all the way up. You know, I look for the positive in everything. You know, I don't deal with negativity. I don't even deal with negativity that comes from my thinking. You know, today, my recovery and prior to my recovery teaches me that I am enough. No matter what's going on in my life, I am enough. You know, living life not on life's terms, but living life on God's terms. And knowing that nothing happens by coincidence and everything happens in divine order.
So for Belinda, it's allowed her to realize she's enough and just seek that positivity and not let that negativity in. For John, it was adventure. It allowed him to see life in a different way, it seemed like. And we just had so many good responses from all of these cares. So this is great. For Deborah, it allowed flexibility. This is awesome. I heard did somebody else want to share? And then we'll
Yeah,
move
I
on.
started to add, Dwayne, I'm not sure we've said this word and it's important. Gratitude. Gratitude, which goes back to what Belinda was saying as far as seeing things in positive life. You know, it's absolutely true, the power of an attitude of gratitude. And that has helped me through some very, very difficult times. So I want to make sure that I add that in there.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful for you all. I wanted this to happen and it just happened naturally the way it was supposed to. Doing the CARES training, I was hoping there was going to be some CARES on here and, you know, people that have, you know, put in the application and have become a CARES and they're doing the work and they're out there providing that peer support in many different ways. So it's just happening naturally. And y'all are the panelists. I wanted y'all to be a part of this. So this is awesome that it's happening. So I'm grateful for that. So as far as the writing sample, we just went over those CARES values, those 6 CARES values that are on the right there. Recovery, commitment, integrity, hope, wellness, and diversity. So as a score, we're looking for 5 things on the writing sample piece. Okay, you're an applicant. You got your 2 years in recovery, you've got your high school GED, you don't have to have a copy, just we're going off a word. And now you're submitting your writing sample. Okay, and the first piece that we're looking for is that you have all 6 of these values within your writing sample that we just talked about. So the first piece we grade on is pretty big, and it takes a while for us to grade the first piece. Each of these pieces is 1 out of 5. So the highest score you could get for your writing sample is a 25. Okay, so let's say if I'm grading on the first piece and you know you have the recovery in there, you have the hope, you have all of them, but you're missing wellness. You didn't really talk about what you do for yourself. I may give you a 4 out of 5 for the first piece. Okay, So that's just an example of how that scoring works. So the second piece we're looking for is the applicant possesses the leadership qualities for cares. Now, when we see this, I see a lot of writing samples that they literally put in there, I've been a great leader in my community. That's not specific enough. All right, this is a competitive field, so I'm trying to give you the secret sauce right now so that you can separate yourself. And this will be recorded, it'll be on the website, so you go back and look at it. But for leadership, we're looking for specific leadership roles that you've carried. We're looking for those key words as well. What did you create? What did you start? What did you help organize? What did you help co-facilitate? Things like that. And along with that, what positions have you actually had in your life? And they don't have to be recovery related. I repeat, they don't have to be recovery related. So if you were the manager at Waffle House, we want you to put that you were the manager at Waffle House within your writing sample, because that's a leadership role. For that one, we're looking for specific leadership roles, and also what you may have, maybe you wrote a book. We want to hear that. Maybe you started a 12-step meeting. You know, maybe you created a new, a new resource at your job, something else that peers can come in and benefit from. Or maybe you helped organize a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner, something like that. Okay, that would all give you points for leadership. The third thing we're looking for is the applicant demonstrates or promotes recovery in their life. Let's back up, because I want there to be plenty of examples within this training. So for leadership roles, what would you put in your writing sample, Ms. Clements? There you go.
All right. For leadership role,
Mhm.
I am the let me see, because how I don't want it to be just recovery based, because there's many pathways to recovery. So I don't want it just to be like I led peer groups at A, B, and C. I held a leadership role at my church. I am the greeter, the head greeter at my church, and I really take pride on welcoming those who come into the facility, into the church, so that they feel welcome and want to come back and want to participate. So that is what I do as far as leadership.
Okay, so head greeter, and I like the way you changed the words, because you could easily not get scored on that by saying I greet people at church. You changed it to I am the head greeter. So that's a specific position. We want to hear specific positions. We want specifics. We don't just want to hear I led this group, I led this. More specific than that, okay? So the third thing we're looking for is the applicant demonstrates or promotes recovery in their life. So basically, how are you an example of recovery within within your network, within your life? How do you promote it? Within this one, we want to hear your recovery capital, and we also want to know what you're doing within your community too. But what you're going to notice is a lot of these, if you're covering your cares values, a lot of these overlap each other, right? So if you're putting something in your writing sample so that you get points for conveying hope, that same thing that you wrote for conveying hope, it may give you points for how you promote recovery in your life, okay? Or it may give you points for the community efforts. So we want to know how you promote recovery in your life and what you're doing for your recovery. So this includes sponsorship, 12-step, maybe you share your story at different events, whatever that looks like to you. We just want to know how you promote recovery in your life. Simone, what would you put for number 3?
Again, for the recovery for me is that I have created a home group of a 12-step meeting at the facility that is available in Snellville. And I created this with 3 other people, this meeting during COVID. And even when COVID had hit and a lot of people had started the Zoom meetings, I continued to open up the doors for that meeting every Friday night. And it would be over 20 people coming that stayed connected. The other is that I am a business owner of a recovery house, 2 recovery houses. So in that, I do the application by how I live and what they see, using motivational interviewing, using the dyads with the clients, and being able to help people right where they are, and meet them at their need, and then show them the new way of life. And not that it's always a 12-step program, as far as NA or AA, it's one of their choosing, because there is many pathways of recovery. A lot of people like to work out. So a lot of people like to maybe just, do their meditation process of what their higher power is for them. So again, owning a recovery facility has also made me stretch and grow to want to go further, to make it a detox, to make it a full facility. And especially being a woman of a Black woman in this business and learning how to continue the growth process for myself and to carry it out with others. I've connected with several different companies that hire a lot of the clients for me, because I'm building business relationships. And I live my recovery out loud with them. And with that, they've been able to allow people that have felonies or charges to give them a job up under the 501c3 of my business. So it's just an awesome process of what recovery has done for me, and it's just totally changed my life. Every day is a different day. I'm just so ever grateful that I have a relationship with God, that I got people like you, Dwayne, my biggest cheerleaders, and I'm just grateful I have the whole Georgia Substance Council, because this knowledge that you guys are embedding in me, I'm able to take it on the road and bring it home, as well with doing diets with my children, just doing motivational interviewing with my family a lot of times, because I have an active family. And they're part of my recovery process. They're active. They don't use the substance, but they surely can use the help in the mental part. So the recovery has helped my family become one. And I'm just so ever grateful for this process.
Thank you, Simone. So number 3, we're talking about what we're doing as it relates to recovery. How do we promote it? What are we doing in our own recovery within our community? Now that we talked about that, what we're doing within our community, what are we doing for our community? And these can easily just tie into each other. So number 4 is the applicant contributes to community efforts for sustained recovery. If this was me, I could throw in feeding the homeless. I could throw in that we clean up the meeting every day after the meeting is concluded. I can throw in service work on the weekends, but be specific with the service work that I'm doing, whether that be cleaning up people's yards. There's several things. So this one's kind of self-explanatory, but what are you doing for community efforts within your community? And let's go, Berlinda.
Yeah, Dwayne. When we first moved to Covington, Georgia, the first thing we noticed was there was no community center here in Rockdale. And that was like, for us, that was like a no-go. People need a place to go where they can be comfortable, and what we call a no judgment zone. So that's one of the major things that we did. We started what is called Grit and Grace. And it's taken off, because people are able to come in, they're able to see Dress for Success. They're able to, if they don't know how to put in an application or the exact words to say so that they are of value to whatever company that they're trying to work at, a place where you can go that's a safe zone. And we've accomplished that. And now we're moving it to bigger heights, because the Rockdale, the judges, the commissioners, all of them were like, wow, my partner, Paula, she works for the Rockdale Accountability Court. So there are participants that the first thing they think, well, I can't do that. But we let them know at Grit and Grace, yes, you can.
Mm.
You know, and you're not alone.
Thank you, Berlinda. And what Berlinda's talking about too, she easily just gave me an example. If I'm grading this, she just gave me an example of how she conveyed hope. So that goes to the CARES values. So you could see how you could say 2 or 3 sentences and it could give you multiple, you know, points on different categories. So what she just said was conveying hope, but also is community efforts. So she gets points for, I would give her points for both of those topics. So, you know, that's just an example how you could say something and it go into another piece that we score on. So now we're on the 5th thing that we score on, and that's the applicant's overall writing sample is in alignment with the mission and values of CARES. The mission of CARES is to promote long-term recovery from substance use disorder by providing experienced peer support and advocating for self-directed care. So the 2 pieces within that mission is providing experienced peer support, which if you're a peer and you have experience, you could do that. You don't have to have a certification or anything for that. If you got the experience and you're sharing your strength, that's providing experienced peer support and advocating for self-directed care. So whatever that may look like to you, as far as how you advocate for self-directed care. So we want to see that within the writing sample too. And that could be, for me, that was when I worked at the crisis unit and me being able to talk with my peer and do our one-on-ones and figure out where they wanted to go and going to the back and working with the case managers. Hey, look, this person doesn't really want to do that. They kind of want to do this. That was me advocating for my peers' self-directed care. So it doesn't have to be in that, it doesn't have to be within an organization though, because a lot of people applying for CARES, maybe they don't have the job yet. But if you have a friend or you have a sponsee that's wanting to do something within their recovery and you're helping them do that, or, you know, even if it's not 12-step, if you just have another peer who's trying to do something, maybe they're trying to get this, they're trying to save up money so they could get a membership to a gym so they could start exercising for their recovery, and you help them with that process. That's advocating for their self-directed care. So we want to see that you have the mission within your writing sample, as well as the CARES values, which was the 6 values that we talked about earlier. And that's for the writing sample. Now we're going to move on to the references. Your reference letters aren't going to be your normal reference letters for a job. It's a little bit different. And you want to make sure that you're talking with your references early on in this application process and having them do it early on. That way you could critique it, see what they're missing, and, you know, give it back to them and be like, hey, you may need to change this or change that. You're not going to be able to do all that last minute. So you want to work with your references early in the process. And you can always reach out to me or anybody from the CARES team, Tia or Laree. We'll work with you. And if you could send us your reference letters, I just looked over somebody's reference letters and critiqued it and, you know, let them know what could be better and what was missing and things like that. So the CARES team is willing to work with you if you show the willingness. All we ask is that you attend a workshop, and we're all in with you and we're helping you get these reference letters tuned in. But you got to start the process early. Give your reference letter time, okay? Again, one reference has to be in recovery and they have to state it. Both of them can be in recovery, but only one has to be. And neither of them can be a family member. Neither of them can be a family member, okay? Let's start with the first thing we're looking for. Again, this is out of 25. The highest score you could get on each piece is 5 points. The first thing we're looking for is that the applicant demonstrates leadership qualities as it relates to CARES. Some of these are kind of similar to what we're looking for in your writing sample, but we want your reference letter, your reference to talk about your leadership qualities again. So if it's Deborah and she's talking to her reference, Deborah may want to tell them, hey, remember to put this in there, that I started this, that I helped create this, that I organized it, because we want to know about that, even though it's already in your writing sample. And we know that you're able to, because sometimes we get a peer that has all this great stuff in their writing sample, but they didn't relay the message to their reference, and the reference didn't put nothing about no leadership quality. So that's the first thing that we score on. Second, the applicant is working a quality recovery program. This goes back to your recovery capital, what you're doing within your community, what you're doing for yourself, what does wellness look like for you? All of that is recovery, okay? Before I move to number 3, did any of the cares on board right now maybe want to talk about what helped them as far as being able to make sure that their references got their letter in on time, and, you know, working with your references? Are there any pointers that you would give a peer about working with your reference? Berlinda, you got your hand up.
Yes, what I did was I got with the 2 individuals that were doing my reference letter. You know, I made sure that they understood and remembered, you know, what I led in, you know, not just my personality, but that I not only am in recovery, but I'm about recovery. You know, when I discussed with them just this, what was needed in the letter, you know, they would call me and say, hey, look, I'm putting down this, this, and this. And, you know, sometimes okay, let's roll with that. Remember, we got to keep it low in words because, you know, you don't have that many. And it worked out very well. But the key to it was staying in contact with them. And when you got the letter, going over it and making sure that there was those components in there so that once it was graded, you know, I could slide on in.
Yeah. Thank you, Berlinda. And you want to make sure this, I see it the most for the references that are in recovery. They make the first 2 or 3 paragraphs about them. And we really don't need that much about the reference. We do want to know that they're in recovery, but they can stop there. We don't need 2 or 3 paragraphs on the reference. And like Berlinda said, you don't got that many words, but you got some room to work with. Minimum 250 words again, and maximum 500, just like your writing sample. Ms. Clemens.
Hey, I stress the core values. I let them know who the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse is. And I also let them know that they could be transparent about me. I didn't want it to be like you had to gloss over anything because just to make it sound good. Of course, one of my references was a care, so they understood the process. But for the other who wasn't, and they were more professional in a job setting type thing. And I was like, this is me, this is who I want to represent, and this is what we need. And so after we got that understanding, I think that it was better for them because they knew my journey, but I didn't know if they wanted to fully disclose what I needed, you know, to make it sound good. I'm like, you don't have to make it gritty, but you can show the transition of who I am. Nice. So that worked for me.
Nice. Edmund Patterson, did you want to share? Another cares.
Yeah, can you
I can hear you.
can you see me?
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
All right, one of the things that helped me was I talked to a cares prior to applying, and it helped in my writing, and it helped because I was real strong in the 12-step fellowship. That's where a lot of my recovery came from. And there was a certain amount of humility of not wanting to state my achievements and not wanting to stay, you know, say that, you know, I was a GSR, I did this, I did that, because I had to change some of my language in my writing. And the people that I had as my references were also in the 12, a lot of them were in the 12-step fellowship, and they were humble. So yeah, I think it's real important to learn a different way of bragging on yourself, you know, to be open about the work you're doing and the work that you've put in. It takes a little bit of self-confidence that I didn't have until someone pointed it out to me. That, you did this, you're doing this. And it really helped with mine, but because I didn't get in the first time, but the next time my writing sample and my references was a lot better after I communicated this.
Thank you, Edmund. Communication is important, y'all. This is not something you just hand off to and be like, hey, have this to me by this day and that be that. You're gonna have to work with them. It's important. So moving to the third thing that we score on is the applicant works well with diverse groups of people. This is when we want to talk about diversity. You're going to have this within your writing sample because it's one of the CARES values and you're trying to score on that. So you're already going to have this piece within your own writing sample. So relaying the message shouldn't be that hard. Letting your reference know what to say, the language we're looking for. Again, we get references. This is what happens if you just send your reference what's on the screen, because we have people do this and it's easy to tell because the reference, literally their writing sample is just short sentences like, Berlinda she's such a leader within her community. Her quality of recovery is great. She works with diverse groups of people. You see how they're using the words that we're scoring on, but you got to get specific. We want you to separate yourself because this is a competitive field. So I think John had his hand raised. John, let me call on Bernice because I ain't heard from Bernice in a while. Bernice, how would you relay that to your reference letter about diversity? What would you tell them to put?
Applicants work well with diverse groups of people. I would tell them to put that I work with another recovery house, women that are dealing with the stigma of not wanting to stay and work on themselves.
What about ethnicities? Is it different colors, different flavors?
Yeah.
We want to hear those specific ethnicities.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you come from. Just tell them about the things that I've done with other people.
Yeah.
Because for me, I did 3 applications in CARES. And it was on the 3rd time that I got in, but it was through coming to 2 workshops because my references and my letter did not line up. So in the end, it all lined up because I got with my references and I was able to, we collaborated together to get the right words and to put in the reference letter.
Yeah. Thank you, Bernice. And we're looking at that too. Bernice brought up a good point. I think Edmund talked about it too. These multiple attempts and applying. If you don't get in your first time, you're a person in recovery, and I know that you're resilient. Okay, so just continuing to try and apply again. As scorers, we look at that too. So all of these things we take into account. We had a peer that made it to the oral interview, and she stumbled on her words, and she paused, and she was paused for like 15 seconds, but then she continued to talk. And when we got in our meeting after the interview, it was like, yo, did you see that girl who stumbled on her words, but she just came back and finished the statement? Like, we're looking for that resilience. So I encourage those who have applied multiple times to keep applying. You are going to get in. I promise you, just continue to persevere and continue to submit that application, continue to reach out to us and we can help. That's another thing. If you don't get in, please reach out. Don't feel like you can't reach out to us because we want you in. We want to grow the workforce, okay? So that's another thing. The 4th thing that we score on, the applicant conveys hope to others regarding recovery. We've already talked about this several times, but hitting up your reference and letting them know to put in maybe a specific example of when you conveyed hope to somebody. Miss Deborah, do you have like a 2 or 3 sentence statement that you could relay to your reference letter and like tell them, hey, put this in there. Do you remember when I did this? What's the time when you conveyed hope to somebody, Miss Deb?
My 2 references, one was a CARES long-term and also had worked with the consul. But another one was somebody who worked with me and saw in my work. And she actually stated when she saw me, even though I was in the leadership role, come out into, this was a large center that I led the group to turn into a recovery rehab. And she described how I came out of my office, went up and sat with the individual who was struggling and shared, not as the leader there, not in that role, but peer to peer about the experience to try to give hope to this individual. So she stated that very specific example that she witnessed.
Thank you, Deborah. And that's powerful. That's a time when Deborah conveyed hope to somebody. Another way that you could put it in there, if you're sponsoring somebody outside of 12-step, if you're mentoring somebody, if you are sharing your story at different events, those are all ways in which you're conveying hope, okay? And your story in itself is an example of conveying hope, but we want more examples and more examples, right? The fifth thing that we look for, the applicant demonstrates reliability and accountability in recovery. So John, if I'm your reference and I'm writing your reference letter for you, and I put, man, you know what? John is reliable and accountable in his recovery, and he's just so great. You think that's gonna work? You got to do more than a word. So what would you tell them to put, John?
I'll put it, tell them that I show up early everywhere I go. If I have an appointment or something, or that you can count on, if I tell you a certain time or a place that I'm going to be there, that I'm there. I'm on time and I'm early. And when it comes to picking other folks up in the city, like I do regularly for meetings, I pick up folks for groups that we hold up here at Connections. I actually pick up a lot of people for to bring to the Fort Church. I lead up the outreach at the Fort Church. And so they know that they can count on me, that I'm going to be there at those times to pick them up, to come hang out with us and do positive things. And so, yeah, that I have integrity with that, where I'm accountable, I show up, and I do what's expected of me. And so, yeah, you definitely want to put details with it. And, you know, Larry Tolbert blessed me because she helped me with my writings. You know, it took me a few times to get into the CARES. And I was blessed to have Felicia Edwards as she was my work wife, is what she told me when up here at Connections. And so she used to be a school teacher. So she stayed on me and she taught me about CARES. I know God put her in my life to really push me during that time to do everything I needed to do to become CARES certified. But yes, accountability is obviously very important.
Thank you, John. And Berlinda, did you want to say something or maybe share an example of what your reference can put for reliability and accountability?
Well, one thing that was put in there, one of my sponsees, she wrote one of my reference letters. Mm-hmm. And when she came out of treatment, she wanted to go back to school. So I was right there with her. You know, I pushed her. And she put on my reference letter that I helped to push her towards, now she's a master. Mm-hmm. She has her master's. Not only does she have her master's, she has her doctrines, and she has her own practice now. You know, and that's mental health and, you know, drug use. She also put in my letter, when it came to diversity, that I sponsor men and women, you know, that I help them to walk through whatever they've got going on.
Nice. Thank you, Berlinda. And this is just CARES helping CARES. Everybody on the screen is a CARES. They've been through the application process. And I thank all of you for becoming panelists and helping me out with this presentation. So CARES 50, the Marmac CARES that's coming up, it takes place August 22nd through August 26th. Applications opened on May 30th, they close on July 11th. If that doesn't work for you, CARES 51, applications open up August 1st, and they close on September 5th at 4 p.m. Okay, all of this is on the website. CARES 51 will take place October 17th through the 21st. Get those applications in. Again, this is the June webinar. The topic is ROSC CARES workshops, ROSC CARES workshops. And the facilitator is Dwayne Ellis, which is me. You all, everybody that's in attendance, y'all could look out for Tia Morgan. She's going to send out a certificate that y'all attended this June webinar within the next week or so. We're a little busy right now, but thank you all for attending, and we'll see you for the July webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dwayne. Great presentation.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dwayne.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Linda, I
Dwayne.
love you.
Thank
Love
you all.
you.
Thank all the CARES. Love y'all.
Yeah.